maybe you bring back True and Joyner, and and you're able to pay Donald, and and some of this stuff all kind of, maybe that's the problem. Maybe once you take out, yeah, you're going to lose a second round pick. EJ's, there's a really good chance EJ kind of walks from the Bills, and it really just becomes, kind of a rental, 1 year rental with that second round pick, which is a high price to pay. I mean, you know, although it's a late second round pick now because they played so well. So I don't know. I think maybe that, when you consider that you've got Josh Reynolds there developing and some of the other guys, and maybe they can go out and get an outside receiver in the free agent market who's going to be half as expensive. That may be, the thing that kind of moves all these Tetris pieces in place. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I'm still holding out that the Rams may decide to tag Watkins, whether it's with the transition tag. I don't think they're going to expend the franchise tag on him given his production this year. But I think the Rams, given how well Goff worked with Woods and Cup after, having an off season with them and working out on their own and all of that, that they might want to give Watkins a chance for that. But I totally understand if they let him go because you got Reynolds sitting in the wings. We have a actually deep receiving core right now, and having Reynolds back there, is kind of nice to have somebody he was a bit raw and giving him that whole year to mature makes me feel more comfortable with him taking over that role. But I don't know if you can discount the hands that Watkins had in the red zone this year. That those 8 touchdowns he caught were, they were just on slants. You could almost I could call the play half the time. It's like they're going to throw a slant to Watkins because he just puts his hands out there, and no matter what the defender did, he's not going to drop it in that situation. So something to lose there without Watkins. But I can definitely see them losing him. As far as Sullivan goes, I agree. I've been hearing about him possibly retiring. He was nicked up. I think a lot of fans are comfortable with Austin Blythe in filling in because when he filled in last year, he played well. You hardly noticed a drop off when he was in. So I mean, I like having him as a backup because it's great insurance because he can play guard, he can play center when one of the older guys gets nicked up. But I would feel comfortable with him in. And as far as Nickel goes, I love Nickel. He played great wherever he was at on the field. Whenever he had to get pushed to the outside because Webster was hurt, or when he played inside, he did a great job. Even though he's a little guy. I mean, we've seen with Joyner, little guys can play. They play big. And he plays big. So I like Nickel, and I think he might come back.
Yeah, Nikel was a valuable piece because he could play outside, he could play inside. He gave you that flexibility when you pair him with Joyner, where you could really shift a lot of those pieces around, make room for Cody. You know that really was kind of an underrated aspect of their defense, and with another, if they are able to stay together another offseason together, you could imagine what what Wade and his staff can kind of do with that group again. I think you also made a really good point about Watkins. Watkins, yes, he didn't get the targets, but he had a huge role on this team. He did lead the team in touchdown catches, and he was also he ended up with the young tight ends, not really coming to the forefront. He gave them that, a team that struggled in the red zone. He was their red zone weapon, and so you wonder that to me is really the only downside of losing him, besides the investment in him, is that you're talking about the weakness on that offense, which was, completing drives in the red zone, and you're taking away the guy who was your most effective red zone player. I mean, obviously they'll have a whole off season to kind of restructure it. Maybe that ultimately solves it if they have to kind of come at a different angle. Maybe, maybe figure out which tight end they could use as that red zone weapon, or structure the whole thing around Todd, or somebody, maybe that third down back that they get in the draft or in free agency. who knows? But I do think that's an interesting aspect. Is that was a weakness on the team, and you're taking away your most effective red zone kind of weapon.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. And it'd be really interesting, if they let Watkins leave, or if God forbid it's more so like Watkins leaves on his own, and they don't really have much of a chance, kind of like Jenkins. Um, it really makes you wonder what they decide to go. I mean, like you have to wonder because they drafted Josh Reynolds in the fourth round. He's 6'3" guy. He's kind of toothpick thin, but he's supposed to be that type of player. He shined in limited amount of snaps, but the real issue is before you make that decision to let Sammy go, who is still only 24, 25. The real issue is like, where is Josh Reynolds in all of this? Is he, is his development coming along enough to the point where you don't need to go out and get somebody, or is it like a serious concern and you have to, approach that in the draft if you lose Sammy Watkins, or even regardless of Sammy Watkins? Like we don't really know until they start evaluating and they make their decisions accordingly. But to go back to Nickel Roby-Coleman and John Sullivan, I think it's really interesting because I think Sullivan is that guy that's bound to get the 1-year deal, probably like $3-4 million. I thought he played really well. He stayed healthy. I think they bring him back on another year, and they run the dice with Austin Blythe if he goes down. And then maybe they get their center next year in the draft. But, then you have Nickel Roby-Coleman, who, I got to say this, guys. I'm sure you can agree. I think the nickel cornerback spot is underrated. I know a lot of people think it's overrated, but Nickel Roby-Coleman's one of the best nickel guys in the league. And just to say that you can just replace that guy, you got to have short area bursts. You got to have the quickness to cover, inside the numbers. It's not as easy as just plugging anybody in there. And, I know there's always people, come draft time, well, that guy can fit right into the nickel spot. And I don't know. I think you got to bring them both back, obviously for the right price. I mean, if John Sullivan goes out asking for, ridiculous amount of money, no, but, yeah, I mean, Roby-Coleman, they barely got for anything. So he's gonna obviously want more, but I'm thinking maybe $4 million a year, $5 million a year. I think that's reasonable.
Remember, we were looking at the estimations. Who knows how close they are? But he was still kind of low, where everyone else was kind of blowing everything out of the water. I do think Nickel is an underrated aspect of the defense. Plus he's a USC guy. He enjoyed being here. He was a positive part of the locker. I think, unless he gets a much better offer from somewhere else, I think you got to bring him back.
Yeah. And, moving on, this is really interesting because the talk of today obviously was, it was Philly. Because Joe and I were listening to the Philadelphia police scanner. That was some, interesting stuff there last night. But then it was also, them winning the Super Bowl, and then also them having almost $10 million over the cap. And, in that regard, it made me wonder. I know they've signed a lot of their young, top guys to long-term deals, but are the Rams in a better situation long-term than the Eagles?
I can't see. The thing about it is, yeah, they could be over the cap, and I'm not a big cap guy. I think they can, you can dig your way out of a lot of those issues. But I do think it's tough to say anybody's in a better spot than the Rams because there's so much. You think about it, right? Just think about what happened last weekend. The Rams have all this business to do. They're trying to sign the best defensive player in the NFL. It's things dragged on already a year, and then now Gurley gets his award. So you got both of these guys. How are you gonna do all this business you have to do and keep all these guys happy I mean, I think that's where that's the one thing I was thinking. I was like, oh, it's a great day for the Rams. This guy won this award, and the two big guys on either side of the line got, their big awards. But my compadre, my coworker from USA Today, Lindsey Jones, straight up asked Aaron in the post game in the interview, after the honors, NFL honors, how does this affect your negotiating? And so that to me, the Eagles may be over the cap, but the Rams have to get some of these guys under contract. They got to fit all these things, and they haven't had a tremendous amount of success. Well, how do I put this? Hasn't there been, a lot of head scratching with some of the things the front office has done the last couple of years, and how much do you trust that you guys are going to be happy as Rams fans coming out of this off season with all the business that's done? To me, that's the big question. Is everyone's happy with the season, but is everyone going to be feeling this happy, come OTAs when everything's put together? And I don't know. That to me is the big question this offseason. Can they keep the flow going? With all this work to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be really hard to retain these guys, especially after how well they're playing. So, yeah, just looking forward and comparing them to the Eagles, I gotta say, regardless of that cap, that the Eagles are just in better shape because I feel like their guys have been drafted more recently. Their young stars have been drafted more recently. Yeah, they have some older guys, older veteran guys that they really rely on and are great players. But the Rams are getting ready. They've been, living off of these rookie deals for so long, being such a young team. And they have all this. It's all, coming home to roost now. Now they got to pay these guys. They got to pay guys like Joyner. They got to finally pay True, give him a deal or let him go. All these deals are coming up, and it's just going to get worse and worse. And another thing I look at is that, the Eagles lost their, Pro Bowl left tackle and still went on and certainly had the best offensive line in that Super Bowl. But they won the award for best offensive line of the year, and they lost their left tackle not even halfway through the season. And so I just say that, looking at the depth that they have, you look at their pass rush and the guys that they can just rotate in and out, it's a little bit frightening looking at them. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we're going to have to compete with these guys to try to get to the Super Bowl for the next, who knows how long. Honestly, right now I look at the Eagles and I look at the Rams, and I'm like, this could end up being, Goff and Wentz could end up being the new Brady and Manning for the next 10, 15 years. Who knows how long? Probably not 15, but next 10 years could be the next Brady Manning. Well, provided Brady retires in the next couple of years. Who knows? He's probably going to play another 10 the way, after throwing 500 yards last night. So
magic avocado ice cream.
Yeah. Whatever he's eating, I should be eating. But it's crazy how talented the Eagles are and how great of shape that they are going forward. And while I want to say the Rams are in as good of shape, there's a couple of things here and there that keep them from not quite being as in good a position as the Eagles, even though they have. Go ahead.
No, I mean, to me, the other thing about this weekend is talent-wise, I think the Rams were just as good as those teams that played this weekend. To me, the question is just retaining all of it and getting it all to line up kind of under the cap. And so, that to me is I do feel like, this Rams team could have been, if it wasn't for Pharaoh Cooper's, putting the ball on the floor a couple times, I do feel like they could have, been that team that they belong in that group. I was, even though I was really impressed with the Eagles, and the Eagles probably would have blown the Patriots out if Wentz had played. You know, I think they were right there